Okay, so today, let's dive into something, kind of heavy, but something I think we've all thought about, right? Forgiveness. I mean, we've all been there, haven't we? Those moments where you're just like, can I actually forgive this? And that's what we're going to unpack today. We're looking at an episode from Moral Dilemmas, the one called Can We Really Forgive Everything? And man, let me tell you, they don't mess around.
It's really interesting how they pull you in, with this made up scenario story.
Yeah.
But it's like instantly relatable. And then they break down all the psychology and philosophy of forgiveness in a way that really makes you think.
Right. Like they don't ease you into it or anything. The episode just throws you right in. Imagine this. You've got this friend, super close, someone you really trust, and you decide to confide in them, tell them something deeply personal, a secret, and then boom, they totally betray you. But it's not just like a small thing either. This betrayal messes up your personal life and your work life. Just devastating. How do you even begin to wrap your head around that?
And that's what's so clever, right? It's like they tap into this universal experience, betrayal. Maybe not all of us have been through something quite that intense, but that feeling, that sting, most of us know it. And it makes you really ask, like, what does it mean to forgive? Is it for them? For us?
Yeah.
Or like some weird combination?
And what's interesting is that the episode actually talks about that, about the psychology of forgiveness. They even talk about forgiveness being a form of self-care, like holding on to anger and resentment. It can really mess you up mentally and physically.
Yeah. And there's a ton of research now to back that up. Holding on to grudges, it can manifest in all kinds of ways. Stress, anxiety, even like actual physical problems. It's like you're carrying around this weight all the time, just weighs you down.
So then the question becomes, how do we put that weight down? How do we actually do forgiveness, especially when it's something big? Because like everyone says, just forgive and move on. But how? How do you actually do that?
Right. $1 million question for sure. The episode talks about this thing called active forgiveness. It's like you acknowledge the hurt, right? You let yourself feel those emotions, but then you make this conscious decision to let go of the anger. Not saying what they did was okay, more like you're choosing to not be weighed down by it anymore.
That makes sense. But they also make this point that forgiving someone doesn't mean you forget what happened, right? And it doesn't mean you have to like welcome them back into your life with open arms.
Exactly. Like you can forgive someone and still keep your distance. It's more about letting go of the negativity, not necessarily like reconciliation. Just acknowledging what happened, dealing with those feelings, and then deciding to move on in a way that puts you first.
Yeah, that's a really important distinction because I'll admit there have been times when I felt pressured to just forgive and forget like that were the same thing. But what the episode really highlights is that there's a danger in doing that. They call it false forgiveness.
Oh, yeah. And that false forgiveness, it's basically when you say you've forgiven someone, maybe to avoid a fight or because you think it's the right thing to do. But inside, you haven't actually let it go. And, well, I think we can all guess that's probably not healthy long term.
Totally. It makes you wonder, though, like, how can you even tell if you're doing real forgiveness or if there's that fake kind? What are the signs that maybe we're not, like, fully over something?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And I think it's something we all struggle with, figuring that out. One way, I think, is to pay attention to how you feel when you think about that person or that situation. Do you still get angry, resentful? Or are you able to think about it without like reliving all that pain? That can be a good indicator. Another thing could be like if you find yourself bringing it up all the time or just dwelling on it in your head, true forgiveness usually comes with a sense of peace, even if it takes a while to get there.
And the thing is, right, it's a process. Forgiveness, it's not just like, boom, you've arrived. And this episode, they really drive that home with these stories, real people who've been through it.
Yeah, definitely. And they're really different, the stories, which makes it even more interesting. Like there's this one woman, Julie, they call her. She forgave her friend who like totally betrayed her. But even though she forgave her, their relationship never really went back to normal. Like they didn't hate each other or anything, but the closeness, that was gone.
So it's like forgiveness, it created space to heal, but it didn't just like erase everything that happened, right? They didn't automatically become besties again, which I guess reinforces the idea that just because you forgive someone, it doesn't mean you have to go back to the way things were before.
For sure. And then you've got Mark. He's trying to forgive his brother after like years of not speaking. And what gets me about his story is that he's honest. He's like, yeah, I've forgiven him, but I don't know if I'll ever fully trust him again.
I felt that. His story, it really hit home for me. Because it shows that forgiveness, it's not always about the other person or even about like fixing the relationship. It can be about you, about finding your own peace. What was it about Mark's experience that stuck with you?
For me, it was how he owned it, his choice. Like he wasn't forgiving his brother because someone told him he had,
Yeah.
he did it because he was ready to let go of all that baggage. It was for him. Which kind of makes you wonder, though, are there some things that are just like unforgivable?
That's the really tough question, isn't it? The episode, it goes there into those really heavy situations, abuse, violence, betrayal that really cuts deep. And it makes you ask yourself in those cases, can you ever truly forgive? And like, even if you can, should you? There's no easy answers. Because yeah, forgiveness, it can be this incredible thing. But at the same time, are you hurting yourself by like forcing it? Especially if the pain runs really deep. Exactly. Like we were saying before, true forgiveness, it takes work. You have to process things, accept things. And with trauma, that kind of pain, maybe that's just not possible. It makes you think, is forgiveness always the right thing to do? Or like, can it actually be harmful sometimes?
Totally. And the episode even challenges that, the idea that you always have to forgive. They suggest that sometimes not forgiving, it's actually the healthiest thing you can do for you, like a way to protect yourself. They have this one line, really powerful. Sometimes not forgiving is the bravest choice we can make.
Wow. Yeah. That really makes you think about all the assumptions we have about forgiveness, right? It's like they're saying, hey, it's okay to put yourself first. That forgiveness isn't about following some rule book. It's about like your own healing, your own path.
Yeah. And sometimes that path, it means not forgiving, or at least not yet. It doesn't mean you're like stuck in anger, just that you need time, space before you can even think about forgiving.
And speaking of time and space, they get into this whole other layer, the philosophy of it all. Like, is unconditional forgiveness even a thing? Can we really forgive anything, no matter how awful it was?
Right. And they talk about how some religions, they're all about that unconditional forgiveness. But even then, how does that actually work in real life? Especially with those really heavy situations. Is there a point where it's too much, where that pressure to forgive, even when it hurts, does it actually hurt more?
It's like those situations where you feel like you should forgive, right? Maybe your family's pushing for it, or society, or even like your own beliefs are telling you to. But inside, you're not there yet. Is that really forgiveness then? Or is it just like going through the motions?
Exactly. And when you do that, when you ignore what you need just to like check a box, that's when it becomes that false forgiveness again, right?
Yeah.
And that can actually hold you back from actually healing.
Totally. It's almost like you're putting on a show, right? Pretending to be okay with something just to please other people. So where does that leave us? What are we taking away from all of this whole deep dive into forgiveness?
Well, I think this moral dilemmas episode, it does something really important. It reminds us that forgiveness, it's not a one size fits all kind of thing. There's no manual, no right or wrong way to do it. And there's definitely no deadline. It's personal.
It's about figuring out what feels right for you, like listening to your gut, your heart, and making choices that, help you heal. And maybe sometimes that means choosing not to forgive, at least for now. And that's okay.
Because the real deal, true forgiveness, it has to be real. Not because someone's making you do it, but because you're ready. And that takes time, and you have the right to set boundaries to put yourself first. Always.
Such a powerful message. So as we wrap things up here, I want to leave you with this. If forgiveness is a journey, how are you going to navigate it? What do you need to find your way through? Honestly, honor your own needs, your own limits, but stay open to the possibility of healing. It's a journey and it's yours. That's it for us. See you next time.